So if you're a fan of Dead by Daylight, or if you used to play Dead by Daylight, you're probably aware of the upcoming game, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which will be releasing sometime next year. What's up everybody, this is McStan and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to talk about how the Texas Chainsaw Massacre can compete with Dead by Daylight and how it could possibly be even better than Dead by Daylight. But before we get into that, I have to ask you to please hit that like button and maybe consider subscribing and joining the McNugget Army today if you are new to the channel. Anyway, with all that out of the way, let's get straight into it. The asymmetrical genre is a very niche genre, and it's very weird if you actually think about it because there's nothing else like it in gaming. And when it comes down to it, Dead by Daylight is definitely the best example of an asymmetrical game. There has been many other asymmetrical games, but none of them have had the success or the massive following that Dead by Daylight actually has. The weirdest part about this whole thing is Dead by Daylight is really the only game in the asymmetrical genre that is relevant at all. There's no games that even can compete with it. Dead by Daylight has no competition whatsoever, and it really shows in how the game is. This game has basically been the same game since its inception, with little tweaks here and there. They had a big graphic update. I know they're always constantly changing the game with perks and things like that, but really the game has been the same since its inception. They do, bug fixes and things like that, but the game hasn't really changed, and that's because there is no competition. The only real competition that Dead by Daylight ever had was Friday the 13th. And this is one of the reasons why I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre actually has a chance at competing with Dead by Daylight. It's because the developer Gun that was behind the Friday the 13th game is also behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that's one thing I think the other asymmetrical games that came out and failed were lacking. They were lacking a team that actually knew how to make an asymmetrical game, or at least promote an asymmetrical game. Because the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, along with Friday the 13th, got a lot of promotion. Actually, I knew about Friday the 13th way before I knew about Dead by Daylight. Now, eventually, of course, I moved over to Dead by Daylight because of all the legal troubles that Friday the 13th was having, and because of this, there was a lack of support for the game. Now, this will not be the case with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There are no legal troubles whatsoever with that IP, so I think that this game will actually do pretty well with support from the developers. So promotion is very important for any game, especially for a new game that no one's heard of, and I feel like this is where most asymmetrical games fail at, that the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will not. Now, these other games fail because most of these promotions that we see on these games are kind of pointed toward asymmetrical players, aka the Dead by Daylight players, and most of those players are not going to leave DBD because they never heard of these games before. Now, that will not be the case with Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's such a huge IP, and basically everybody knows what the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. Honestly, it kind of promotes itself. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre has two very good things going for it. First of all, it has a team behind it that knows what it's doing when it comes to the asymmetrical genre. And secondly, it has a huge IP that everybody knows. Literally ask anybody what their favorite horror movie is, and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre usually will end up in the top 3. So this is a very popular IP, and I think that's really a good thing for Texas Chainsaw Massacre because other asymmetrical games don't get recognized because they're just not popular enough. So what is the main issue with Dead by Daylight, and how can Texas Chainsaw Massacre fix this? Well, I think the main issue of the game is its core gameplay elements, and that is it being a 1v4 video game, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre actually fixes this with making it a 4v3. Now you're probably wondering, how is a 1v4 a problem for Dead by Daylight? Well, the main issue is it's a team versus one person, and when it comes to TCM or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's not going to be a team versus one person. It will be a team versus team game, so in the end, it will be a more balanced game. Now, of course, when it comes to balancing an asymmetrical game, it's nearly impossible, simply because the term asymmetrical within itself means that it's not balanced. It means that one side is going to outweigh the other side. If you want a balanced game, you're going to play something else, something like a 4v4 or a 6v6. Asymmetrical games means that one side is going to have an advantage over the other side. And I think this is the biggest problem with Dead by Daylight, because we have 4 minds up against 1 mind. So these are 4 different thought processes going on at one time against one. And it's kind of unfair when you think about it, because there's only so much one person can do against 4 people, especially if 4 people are really good at the game. So as someone who is very experienced with Dead by Daylight, I've been playing the game for many years. I have around 2,000 hours in the game. I can tell you that playing Killer is definitely way more stressful than playing Survivor, and in most cases, playing Survivor isn't stressful at all. And it comes down to the point of that's 4 people against 1 person. You're gonna have help on the Survivor side, you don't have help on the Killer side. It's really that simple, and I don't think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will suffer as badly as Dead by Daylight does when it comes to balancing, because of the fact that there will be 3 killers and 4 survivors, or victims, which they are called in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Another thing I wanted to mention is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre seems to be going for a more scary tone, as of where Dead by Daylight isn't really scary at all. Now, of course, Dead by Daylight does have its scary moments, and it is scary when you first start playing it, but once you learn it, it's not really that scary. The playstyle of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre seems more of a hide-and-seek kind of game, where you want to do things with the killer not finding you, as of where in Dead by Daylight, when I play it anyway, I want to get the killer's attention right away. I want the killer to chase me, because that's the funnest part of the game for me. Another thing that I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will excel in gameplay-wise is the actual objectives. Now, when you think about Dead by Daylight, what is the main goal of Dead by Daylight? It is to complete generators. And I couldn't really think of a more boring goal in a game than doing generators. It's so boring to sit on a generator, holding a button, and just clicking another button for skill checks. It's really the most boring thing you can do in this game, and it's the main objective of the game. I can't believe that they would pick such a boring thing to base their game around. And really, this is where the toxicity comes into play with Dead by Daylight, because nobody wants to do this. Everybody just wants to have fun. They want to be chased by a killer or help their friends who go down instead of doing generators, because generators are boring. And when it comes to the TCM, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it looks like they're going to fix this, because at least the objectives in this game are more interactive, and I'm not just sitting there holding one button. I really hate generators, as you can tell. Anyway, I do think that TCM does fail in terms of the variety of things that it can do, because of the fact that Dead by Daylight gets so many licenses, and it seems like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is just going to be focused around the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So in terms of diversity or getting characters a part of this game that are going to get people excited, I don't think TCM will actually be able to do that. So that is one drawback of this game. But it does look like the developers are actually creating original characters for the game. So that is a good thing. They're not only all going to be from the films, but we are going to get original characters. So we could get some really cool killers or really cool survivors coming to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So that is definitely an option. But it definitely cannot compete with how many licenses that Dead by Daylight gets, right? They have Halloween, they have the Nightmare on Elm Street, they have Scream, they even have Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is really where Dead by Daylight excels, and this is how they keep their player numbers up. If their numbers start to drop, they release another licensed character that get people excited for the game who have never played the game before. I remember way back when I first came to Dead by Daylight, I came to the game because I saw that Freddy Krueger was in the game. I saw them advertising Freddy, and I was like, okay, I definitely want to play a game that has Freddy Krueger in it. So I picked up Dead by Daylight, and I kind of fell in love with it. So I think that is something that Dead by Daylight is always going to have. They're always going to be getting these cool licensed characters that are always going to keep new players and old players who have stopped playing returning to the game. Anyway, guys, I want to hear your thoughts on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how it compares to Dead by Daylight. Now, I know, of course, we haven't seen enough of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but from the little we have seen, and from what I've said in this video, do you think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre stands a chance against the king of asymmetrical games, Dead by Daylight? Let me know in the comments section. I would really love to hear your thoughts on it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.